Let me repeat that. So at 6 p.m., notice is hereby given that the above call meeting of the governing body of the city of Balcones Heights, Texas, will be held on Monday, August 5th at 6 p.m. in the Justice Center located at 3300 Hillcrest Drive, Balcones Heights, Texas 78201, to consider and act upon any lawful subject which may come before said meeting, including among others the following items to be discussed and acted upon. We'll call to order and recording of a quorum. I note that we have the full quorum of the council here. And so, Madam Secretary, we have full quorum. And we will call the meeting to order. We'll now move with the invocation and pledges of allegiance to the U.S. and Texas flags. Who is going to be reading the invocation today? Oh, he was the last one. Okay. Who else would like to read? To the flag of the United States of America, which it stands, one nation, God, for all. Thank you, Mr. Lucia. So at this time, we have the public comment period. This time, citizens who have filled out a registration form prior to the start of the meeting may speak on any topic they wish to bring to the attention of the governing body, so as long as that topic is not on the agenda for the meeting. During the citizens to be heard section, no council action may take place and no council discussion or response is required to the speaker. Citizens who wish to speak on a specific agenda item when that item is called for discussion must first fill out a registration form prior to the start of the meeting indicating which agenda item they wish to address. So we have one request, and it is from Mr. Lamar Gillian. If you'd like to step up, Mr. Gillian, good to see you. Good evening, sir.
My name is Lamar Gillian. I live at 324 Glen Arm, Balcones Heights, Texas. It's going to be brief and to the point. First of all, I'd like to say I thank Mr. Valverde or Councilman Valverde for his comments last time. It was very much appreciated. And I want to go back about almost 2,000 years ago to a gentleman held in high esteem by the Christian community, St. Paul. And St. Paul, in the letter to the Galatians in chapter 5, verses 22 to 26, he wrote these words. He said, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking, or envying each other." Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Gillian, for your kind words. Well, with that, we'll open with item number one under the business items. The budget workshop for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2024 and ending September 30th, 2025. Mr.
Thank you,
Please.
Mayor. Council. And thank you for Mr. Gillian for not passing around the collection plate. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council, and welcome to our second budget workshop for the FY25 budget. There's a lot to cover. So we'll go into what budget workshop is. We did all this that you see on the screen. We're going to go through the first four rather quickly because there's minor changes. And we're going to spend most of our time on the meat and potatoes of it tonight, and that's the tax rate. I hope to give you as much time afterwards to deliberate because this is the meat and bones of what we're here for this year. So you have a copy of the slides. You also have a copy of the line item budget the slides were based upon. And so when we do the tax rate tonight, it's something different, or for those of you that are new to council, we will need to take two votes. The first one is our intention on what we intend to do with the tax rate. And our second one is to schedule a public hearing. So right up front, what we do with the tax rate, it is not something that we're setting in stone. It is simply setting our intentions for the tax rate. And the reason why we have to do that is because of local government code. Based on what the tax rate is, that chooses the wording that goes into the advertisements and goes onto the websites. But we'll talk more about that later when we get to it. So the overview, the bottom line, when we got together last time, we had a $411,000 deficit. We said that we could probably bring that down to about 250, 225. And so tonight you see $223,000 deficit there. That's about as low as I can get it, folks, without starting to chop expenses. That deficit is based on the current tax rate, same as last time, 0.604. We managed to lower it down from $411,000 primarily by moving in $100,000 worth of revenue from the EI fund, which would be 1/3 of the CPS franchise fee. We also received new estimates for the COLA estimate. It went down from 3.3 to 2.7, and that saved us some money. We also saw a little bit on the medical estimate so far. And so all of that helped bring that deficit down to 223,000. Okay. Okay, total budget. Next slide. So as we normally do in July, we also tweak the revenues and the expenses. Some went up, some went down. And so that creates new total budget revenues and expenses, general fund amounts, so forth. And so we'll just go over this real quickly. Total budget revenues are up $138,000 since budget workshop number 1. We had a slight increase to sales and property tax revenues. We're at that stage now where we can make a better estimation of these. And so the sales taxes and property taxes revenues went up from a 2% increase to a 3% increase. And a bunch of other tweakings to the revenues and whatnot. Okay. Budget expenses are down $18,000 from the last time we got here. A bunch of tweaking up and down. The biggest thing, payroll went down about $50,000 for the reasons that I indicated. Other expenses went up. So overall, we're looking at a decrease of $18,000 on the budget revenue side. And again, personnel costs are the city's largest expense category. FY25 personnel costs are up 0.5%. That's virtually the same that was budgeted last year. And that's pretty remarkable considering that you usually see about a 3 to 4% increase on your payroll every year. Okay. And so what happened to payroll? So like we said, the scheduled, the COLA was reduced from 3.3 to 2.7 based on the SSI estimate that we saw in July. Generally, it's tracking down. It started up the year higher, but it's tracking downward now. And a lot of people are calling for a recession, so that rate could still go even lower. But for right now, it's 2.7, and the medical costs were reduced. We also eliminated the EDC director position. The traffic safety fund administrative position was removed. And those are the reasons for the cost reductions, basically. Due to the loss of the traffic safety fund, we did move 3 positions into the general fund, which is creating or help creating the deficit that we see. Personnel costs by function. So public safety is still 76% of total payroll expenses, and that's your police, fire, and dispatch services. Public safety accounts for 46 payroll positions. Administration is 5. Community development and public works is 6 positions, and court is 4 positions. Nothing has changed on the debt side. We just want to point out here that in FY25 next year, the tax note for the Vivian Lane Street project drops off the books. That's $74,000. And in FY26, the fire truck drops off the books for $116,000. And all that's important because we're building up to our debt timeline. Yeah, any questions, just stop me or I'll keep going. Next slide, please. You can, or we can wait till I'm in. Yeah, I'd rather wait, but it's up to you. I'm going to go through it real fast and open it up. So yeah, so, yeah, thank you. So on the debt timeline, this is in consideration of the Hillcrest project that is scheduled for December of 25. That's when construction is slated to begin right now. And so our debt timeline is constructed so that once the Vivian project falls off the books, and we could go out for the first phase of debt for Hillcrest, we would replace the $74,000 of debt with about $80,000 of debt. Again, just stepping that up. When the fire truck falls off, then we could go with the next round of funding for Hillcrest, and that would bump up, replace the 116,000 with $240,000 worth of debt. So it's a big jump, but we're stepping it up. And that's all predicated on the fact that we do the Hillcrest project, which we don't know if we're going to do yet. So for now, I would just say, let's just forget about Hillcrest. We got bigger budget issues, but keep this in the back of your mind, because what we had decided last year was to go out on an election for this, a bond election for this in May. And if that happens, then we have to have everything in place by February. And so we have some time for this. And so for now, I would just say, just keep it in the back of your mind. A general fund, this picture is all wrong. We no longer use the abacus, folks. We've graduated up to pocket calculators now. So we think we're doing well here. Right, general fund revenues did increase $159,000 over our first budget workshop. We added the CPS franchise fee. We took that out of the Economic Incentive Fund, 1/3 of the franchise fee, and that now goes into the general fund to help reduce the debt. We talked about the slight increases to sales and property taxes from 2% to 3% for each. On the general fund expense side, we're down 29,000. We've saved, yeah, next slide, Ms. Lisa. So we've decreased costs, $29,000 in the general fund. Yeah.
Mayor, you're mine.
I thought, did you say the franchise fees increased? I just want to catch that.
Hey, that's a good yes or no answer. The fee itself has not increased, but the way it was set up this year is 2/3 of it goes into the general fund and 1/3 of it goes into the economic incentive fund. So we're returning that 1/3. So yeah, in the general fund, that amount will increase by about 105,000. Yes, sir.
I was wanted to catch that.
Yeah, no problem. And on the expense side, they're down $29,000 since the last time we got together. 42,000 of that was reduced payroll costs. Some of the other expenses went up. And so the overall change there is 29,000. Personnel costs are your biggest cost in your general fund, 4.6 million. And nearly 71% of that goes for public safety, police, fire, and dispatch. A capital fund, a little bit of change, not much here. The important thing, can you go back to just the important thing to know with your capital fund is that there is no direct revenue source for it. It is funded by transfers in from the sweep from the general fund each year, transfers in from the sewer, stormwater, economic incentive, street funds. All of those funds are donating or transferring money into the capital fund. So the question had been asked, does this affect our tax rate? And so the answer to that is no, it does not. Whether you buy anything this year in the capital fund or whether you double the spending, it's not going to affect your tax rate. So that's the important thing to understand. Okay. Otherwise, not much has changed. We did remove the dumpster enclosure, and that saved $15,000 in the capital fund this year. Street projects still $504,000 for Crestview and some cost for engineering for Hillcrest Drive. Equipment purchase is $160,000, and you can see what they're for. Capital fund budget itself, as we're running a surplus now in the capital fund, and that capital fund beginning fund balance is starting to grow. And that's good because the way the street projects work is that we have to flip the costs or the expenses of it up front. And then we get reimbursed anything that the county has provided us. And so it's important to have a good fund balance there for your street projects. Special revenue funds, well, we lost the red light camera, so I guess I can take that picture off. So, yeah, next. But just to put it up here, and part of the, and obviously the big part of the reason why we're having the deficit that we're having now is because the red light cameras have gone away. That program concluded in May 24. We still have a little revenue trickling in, but it's going to fade out here pretty fast. And so what we would do with the revenue every year, we had about $450,000 of usable revenue, and we paid 3 police positions, some administrative costs, and we also paid the street light bills. So when this fund goes away, all those costs get put into, of course, the general fund. We still have 4, this hasn't changed much, the amounts, maybe a little bit, but we still have 4 funds with deficit spending. The first one being the Economic Development Corporation, nothing changed here. We still don't anticipate any partnership dividends, and $400,000 at least is recorded every year for the loan expense. Economic Incentive Fund, this one's changed a little bit because we took the CPS franchise fee out of it. That's $105,000 worth of revenue that's taken out of this fund. And so we're running a deficit of $205,000 in the Economic Incentive Fund. Street funds, nothing's changed. We stopped the revenue going into that from the general fund last year. And so this year it's $142,000 deficit spending. And Fund 12 is the fund that we're closing out. We're going to just finish off the revenues on that and close it out this year or next year. And so your general fund is your largest fund. After that, not counting the capital fund, your crime control district is your second largest fund. It is balanced in a good healthy fund balance there, about 3 months. Your hotel occupancy tax would be your next largest fund after that. It is balanced. So we took the economic development director's position away. That saved money in the hotel occupancy tax fund. So what we did then is we took some of the administrative costs in the general fund and filled out the hotel occupancy tax fund. So that saves us money in the general fund and allows us to present a balanced budget in the hotel occupancy tax fund, which has obviously a very good fund balance. Proprietary funds, they're balanced. We are taking $250 out of the sewer fund, transferring that into the capital fund. On the stormwater, we're taking, I believe, $50,000 out of that for the capital fund, and that fund is balanced as well. Okay, so do you want to do questions now before we go into the tax portion of it, or you just want me to keep rolling?
Anybody have questions you want to start with?
Okay.
I thought now would be a natural breaking point for
ahead.
questions. That way, when we get into the tax rate, that's when we'll really
Sounds good.
bring the hammer.
Okay.
If everybody agrees. If not, we can hold all questions to the end.
Whatever the pleasure of the council. Okay, let's move forward.
So now we're going to slow down a little bit and focus a little bit more on our property tax rate and the calculations. So a couple of Sundays ago, the county released the certified totals. Yeah, they did it on a Sunday. And so that's the number one step there. So we've determined what the taxable value of the city is. And that number is $360,575,946. And that's up 2.8% over last year. So that's the first step. After that, a week later, the tax assessor collector calculates your no new revenue and your voter approval rates for you. I do the same. And so that step is done. With that, I can calculate a rate, which will generate X number of dollars, and that is thrown into the budget that you see tonight. So that part is done. What is next is for council to set the tax rate. Now, that's not tonight. That happens when we vote on the budget on September 23rd. But like I said, we would like to get some kind of an indication tonight on what council intends that rate to be. Okay. We have to go back and look at definitions for a minute and make sure that we understand what we're talking about here. So taxable value is basically your appraised value or your market value. That's what the market is, less exemptions. And that's used to calculate your property tax rate, that taxable value number. That's that big number, that $360 million number. With that, we can calculate a proposed tax rate. But before we do that, we have to understand that there are two components to the tax rate. One is for debt and one is for general fund. The one that is for debt is called INS, or interest and sinking. And that amount goes into the debt service fund to pay your debt, which in this case is the Vivian tax note and the fire truck tax note. Okay. The M&O is also called maintenance and operations, and it's the portion that goes into the general fund to fund the city operations. Typically, 99% of the time, the smallest amount there is going to be the INS for most cities, and the largest number is going to be the M&O portion. Fortunately, we're kind of low on the debt side, so we have a low INS, which means most of it can go towards M&O. These two tax rates are tied together. The INS plus the M&O go to make the tax rate. They're directly or in proportional. So if one goes up, then the other one's going to go down. So if we were to eliminate all the debt, then the M&O side would get bigger. And at that point, you could say, okay, let's cut the tax rate if you want, and we would still get the same amount. But if INS goes up, obviously, then the M&O side is going to go down, which means less money to the general fund. And if you want to keep the same amount of money going into the general fund, you would have to raise the tax rate in order to make up the difference. Okay, so they squeeze in the balloon. As one goes up, it's got to go somewhere, right? Okay, so understanding that, we can generate a proposed tax rate by figuring out each of those components, and we'll show you that in a second. But just understand that it's two things that you're looking at here, and we have to do the debt first and then the M&O. The tax assessor has calculated the the voter for us, and what. Okay, think of the voter approval rate as your ceiling and your no new revenue as the floor. Ideally, you want your tax rate to fall in there somewhere, right? It's okay if it goes below the no new revenue rate. Taxpayers love that, but you can't go over the voter approval rate because well, you can, but it would generate a vote. It triggers an automatic election. And so 99 times out of 100, that's going to fail. And if that happens, you resort back to the voter approval rate. So think of those as the range that you want your tax rate to fall into. Your current rate is simply the rate that we're operating under right now. And for this tax year, that's 0.604. And it's what this budget that you have tonight is based on as well. We keep it at 0.604 until you tell us to change it to something else. The average home is computed for you every year as well by the county. And it's just a metric, something for you to look at and say, oh, okay, if my home was this amount, I would pay this on the tax bill. Obviously, if your home is worth more, you'd pay more. If it's worth less, you would pay less. But it's an average home metric that they calculate for every city every year. With that in mind, let's take a look at the historical values. We said the values this year, 360, 575, 946. And you can pretty much see what the rates have been doing since 2018. They've been steadily going up. And then COVID hit in 2021. They dipped off a little bit, and then they came back like wildfire the last couple of years. A big increase last year, but what, 8%. And then this year, it's kind of tapering off a little bit. And that 2.8% increase you see. Last year, it was 350 million. This year, it's 360. If we head towards a recession, you could expect that number to follow the market and go down a little bit next year. But that's a problem for next year. That's just speculation. Okay, so why is my tax rate going? Why is my tax bill going up every year? Well, this is the main driver of it right here. It's because your market rate is going up. Your taxable value is going up every year. Even if you keep the same tax rate, even if you lower the tax rate, it's still going to go up because your market value is going up. Okay, let's go to the next slide. A couple of things to point out here. For a number of years, the city maintained the same tax rate, 0.583. That's politically expedient, of course, because you can go back and tell your residents, hey, the city did not raise your tax rate. Well, they're going to ask, well, why did my bill go up? Well, two reasons. Number one, those historic, that taxable value, the market is going up. And number two, the city isn't the only one that's driving your tax bill. There's other entities that have a portion of your tax bill as well. And so If you remember that those rates are going up every year from the previous slide, but you see that the tax rate is remaining the same. So because the market is going up, we're generating more money for the city without having to raise the tax rate. Okay. Obviously, if you lower the tax rate, you could lower it a little bit and you would still end up with a higher property tax bill because you're still generating more because the market value went up. The last thing to look at here is the proportion of INS to M&O. The debt is the light blue, the general fund is the dark blue portion. You can see it's been pretty steady over the years, up and down a little bit, but it took a big hit last year as we had to put the debt for the fire truck into the debt service fund. And so that jacked up the INS portion. That meant, of course, less money for the M&O portion. So that was one of the challenges we had last year, and thus the tax rate, even though taxable values went up. Okay. So let's start the calculations. So how do we figure out what the tax rate's going to be? Well, we have to figure the INS first. We know we're going to have to pay $193,829, or I'm sorry, we need that much in the debt service fund. So you take that big number of 360,575, and you divide it into 193,829, you times it by 100, and you get that tax rate off to the right there, that 0.053755. Okay. If the city only had debt and we had no need to bring money into the general fund, that's the lowest tax rate that the city would set, just enough to cover your debt. But of course, we do need money into the general fund. How much money do we need to balance to get rid of that $233,000 deficit? Well, I would need $2.2 million to get rid of that deficit. So you divide that big number into it again and times it by 100, and that tax rate would be 0.612227, or 61 cents per $100 of evaluation. So then you just add it all up. And so the tax rate that would be needed to get rid of the deficit that we have would be 0.665982. And that's a pretty big number. So next slide. For comparison, just last year, you can see taxable value went up 2.8%. The tax rate that would be needed this year versus next year, that would be a 10% increase. And the amount of revenue that would generate would be a 13.4% increase. And we always put it in there. Each 1 cent increase to the property tax rate generates an additional $36,057. So if you go up another penny to 0.67, that would give you 36,000. Another, you go up to 0.68, that would give you 72,000. Okay, so where does that number, that 0.665982, fit into the range that we talked about? Well, let's see that. Okay, so that big number that we need to balance the general fund is well above the voter approval rate. It does not fall within range at all. So that is extremely high, obviously, and so therefore we would not propose that as your tax rate. But if you did, that would bring in the necessary $2.4 million of revenue needed to balance the general fund plus pay your debt. If you went with a voter approval rate, the highest rate you could go without an election, you would generate just over $2 million of revenue, and that would drop your general fund deficit down $30,000 to $193,000. If you said, let's just keep the rate at 0.604 the way it is now, that generates the $223,000 deficit that we walked into the door with. If you say, let's make our tax rate the no new revenue rate, because we want to pay about the same as we did last year, then your deficit in the general fund would go up to $262,000. And if you said, hey, let's go ahead and decrease that rate even more, then obviously if you wanted to do 0.58, then that would jack up the deficit 30,000. If you wanted to say, hey, let's do the same rate so that my tax bill is the same as last year, then you're looking at an even lower rate and a higher general fund deficit of about $400,000. So you can see how all this plays together, hopefully. Okay. We always show the average home. Last year, 178,000. This year, 194,000. About a $16,000 increase. Based on the 0.604 that we currently have, That would be about a $96 increase for the city's portion of the tax bill. And keep in mind, that's just the city's portion. We don't know what the other entities are doing yet. School district, I think, is going down, but what everybody else is doing yet, we don't know. Obviously, if your house is more than that, you'll pay more. If it's less than that, you'll pay less. But that's the metric that's provided by the county every year. All right, tax rate comparisons. We're almost number one, but we're almost at the top. But we want to be at the bottom of this one, folks. So in years past, Kirby has been in number two, but they dropped off some of their debt, and so they've lowered their tax rate a little bit. We had to increase theirs a little bit. So we're in number two slot now, just ahead of the city of Kirby. And yeah, I mean, and there's the other cities that you can look at. Obviously, some of these cities are pretty wealthy cities. They have higher home values and whatnot. Most of the cities on there, well, in fact, all of them that I could find, had higher valuation increases than what Balcones Heights did this year. Leon Valley was up 4.8. We were up 2.8. Alamo Heights 8.7, almost 20%. Somerset 9.4. Even Kirby went up 6.1%. So that's not those. Obviously, those rates not going up as much means less revenue coming in. I will say that your tax rate is a function of the services that you offer. Okay, keep that in mind. Balcones Heights offers dispatch, full-fledged fire department, police services, court, public works, all those things. However, the number of services that we provide is equivalent to what Kirby provides. Okay, Kirby is a city that's 3 times larger than us, land mass wise. It's 3 times the population of what we have. And so we always say we're a small city, and that's true, but the services that we have are really more for 9,000 people and 2 square miles versus what we have. And I know there's a reason for it. I'm not arguing that. There's a reason why, you know, obviously we have more pass-through traffic. Obviously we have more businesses than what Kirby has. But the city of Kirby, even though they, you know, have similar services, they have 53 people on the payroll. Our city has 58. Okay, so I know it's not an apples comparison, but it gets the point across. We're staffed like a bigger city, folks. And that's why our tax rate is what it is. Next slide. Taxing entities. 6 taxing entities receive nearly 80% of the taxes levied. The city's leverage in all this is only about 20%. We've said it before, theoretically, the city could say no taxes. We're not going to charge anything for taxes. And all these other entities could increase their rate, and you would still see an increase on your tax bill because they have more leverage than what we do. As for who is paying the tax bills, next slide, yeah. I thought you could read my mind. Okay, so your commercial businesses are paying the bulk of it. They're paying 65% roughly. And of course, with businesses, they can pass that cost on to the consumer. Your multifamily or your apartment complexes are picking up 25% of the cost. They, of course, can pass it on to the people that are renting. The residential, you guys that actually own and live in your house, you're picking up the other 10%. You can't pass that along unless you're charging your grandkids rent, which I would highly recommend you do. It's good for them. But the city does provide certain tax relief for homeowners because we can't, as homeowners, we can't pass the buck. And so as of last year, these are last year's numbers, it was $45 million in tax relief to homeowners. Okay. Okay, so in summary, before we get to work here, just a few more slides, but just to summarize what we just talked about, the deficit going into tonight is $223,494, and it's based on a 0.604 tax rate. Ultimately, we're looking for guidance from council as to what you want that tax rate to be and how you want us to get it there. Okay, next slide. What we're going to see when we're all done talking tonight is we're going to make a motion here on our proposed tax rate. This is non-binding. We don't set the tax rate again until September. This simply says what our intentions are as council. Why we do this is because according to local government code, I have to word the advertisements and everything that goes out on the websites, truth and taxations. I have to word it a certain way based on the tax rate that you guys choose. If you go over the voter approval rate, it has to be worded a certain way. If you go over or in the range that you want, it has to be worded a certain way. If you go below it, it's a completely different wording. And so that's why we're going to have this. But we'll come back to it and explain it. But again, it's non-binding. You can say whatever you want tonight. It doesn't, it's sort of like the crime control budget. We passed it right knowing that it was going to change. And so it's the same as this. And then after that, we're going to do a motion to set the public hearing. The public hearing is already on your calendar for Monday, September 23rd. We'll just take a vote to allow us to continue and post that. And so that's it. Your next workshop is Tuesday, September the 3rd, not Monday, because that's a holiday and nobody will be here. And so Tuesday, September 3rd is our next budget workshop, and there's still time for more if necessary. But ultimately, we culminate with September 23rd as voting for the budget and the tax rate. And could you go back to the summary real fast? Yes, sir. Mhm. And with that, I will leave it or open it up to questions.
Questioning to Mr. Messick. Yeah, Mr. Valverde, you have the floor.
I've noticed here that it shows decreased the COLA estimate from 3.3% to 2.7. Is 3.3 the predicted COLA increase for 25 or?
It was in the spring, yes, sir, but according to the July estimate, it's now 2.7.
It is
That's why we
2.7?
That's why we reduced it down. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. The other question is on the slide number 9, total debit. I've noticed the Wonderland partnership. I've noticed the loan amount is 5,400,000, and for FY25, the balance is 6,041,680. Why is that?
Because of all the fees and interest that are incorporated into a loan to begin with. And so we took out 5.4, but the payback was much more than that, right? It was like whatever it was, 6.5 million or whatever. And so the loan amount is going down, but the overall balance, which includes the principal and the interest, it's a higher number to start with, and it's going to be going down too. And the closer you get down towards the end of it, the more principal will be paid and the less interest. But that's a good point. The 399,000, that is not covered under taxpayer debt. That's not in your debt service. That's paid in the EDC. So this loan does not affect the INS portion of it. So
Okay. On slide number 20, the EDC Corporation Fund 31, I've noticed the expenses, there's an increase of $37,000. Is that for repairs and maintenance, or what is that for?
that's a placeholder number for legal expenses. Right now, the attorney does not charge us, but if he decides to start charging us again, that expense is in the budget. We don't expect any of these expenses to be paid, but they're there. And we do it that way. Like there's training and travel in there. Will you all do any training and travel in the EDC? Maybe, maybe not, but if you need to, that number is in there for you. But again, we don't expect those expenses to be incurred. But if they are incurred, they're already in the budget, and so we don't have to do a budget amendment for it.
Okay. And I believe one more question. On the, well, you probably don't know this, on the hotel occupancy tax, I see a drop of 4,000. Is that because of lack of clients or customers? Do you know?
Well, it's been trending downwards because we've lost 3 hotels, right? So once they go away, obviously that amount's gonna go down every year. But we've seen a slight drop off this year from Spring Hill. And so we're just carrying that trend into next year. Obviously, if more comes in, great. then we're better off, but it's better to be conservative at this point. Will we bring in the same amount as last year? Maybe, but again, that's just conservative budgeting there. And the fact that it is trending down over the last couple of years.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Valverde. Anyone else?
One of the things you keep bringing up is we're down because of the red light cameras. We're down because of the mall too. That's being said without being said. And, you know, we've got that balloon payment coming up. And I don't know where that money's gonna come from for that. Trying to find everywhere I marked. So no new revenue rate. Is that the same as a rollback?
What slide are you?
Rollback rate?
What slide are you on? The answer is yes. That is what was the old
Slide
rollback?
35.
Okay, just for everybody else that might want
You
to
don't
know.
need to get to
Yeah.
35. You don't need to. I just wanted, is that renamed a new, no? new
Yeah, they
revenue?
renamed it all a few years ago. Yes. Mhm.
Uh, Let's see. With the fire chief, you're good on fire engines, right? Are we gonna have anything fall out?
No, we're maintaining what we have, but our tower's getting up in age. It's already almost gonna be 21 years old, I think. So, but I mean, we're maintaining it, we're taking care of it, so we try to squeeze as much as we can out of it. We've also been looking at grants through FEMA for fire trucks. So what's kind of, it's kind of a challenge with those because there's so many. So, but we're trying for that, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
And of course, we're good on police vehicles. We just got, what, 3 or 4 into the,
I think because they were so backed up, it was, is it
Right.
6 or 4? And so, yeah, and so that's why there's only one vehicle on the, for this year. Mhm.
back here. I'm all over the place. I apologize.
Take your time.
Lisa's having a hard time keeping up with you here.
Making her work. General fund, on slide 13, the largest expense category, it's off that little purple. Yeah. Dispatch, what are we doing with dispatch? How are we going along with Med on that stuff? Rodriguez, Mayor Rodriguez?
Chief, I'll defer to you on that. Yes.
Yeah, as far as I know, you know, but based on last year's discussions, we're still moving forward. We're trying to find to outsource dispatch. And unless that's the will of the council to change that, you know, we're still moving forward discussions with the sheriff's department.
We are. I wasn't aware of that. I thought we had ditched that idea.
I haven't received any direction from council
Okay.
on doing that. If that's the will of the council, we'll stop the effort right now. But our biggest cost is if you're gonna outsource anything, that's your biggest cost. It's the bodies, it's not the equipment. The bodies are still there. And so if you want to make a significant impact to address a big number, then that's the only place you have where you actually have somebody else providing the service. It's not cutting the service, it's outsourcing the service. So unless I receive direction from council, we're still moving forward with that, Mayor.
I was unaware of that. Would have been good to know. Nevertheless, it's better known now than never.
Well, if I may, when I made my presentation last week, it was in the presentation, it was included, that was the state, the moving forward proposal that was created the year before.
In our last meeting?
In our last budget presentation, and under budget challenges, it's listed in there.
Oh, but did you speak about it? No, right?
I'm sorry?
You didn't speak about it like.
I
you did now.
presented it.
Yeah. Do you remember him presenting? it? I don't.
I mean, he
I don't
he
recollect.
very may well have, but I think.
Yeah, he
I
might
think
want-
Doesn't matter if you remember, it's in the presentation.
Yeah.
And it was presented last time.
I got you. But I think we approached Bear Met after that budget meeting is when
Right.
we approached Bear Met and they started with the chairs and
So they're
assessed
gonna,
our
yeah,
dispatch.
they're awarding us 4 chairs at, I think, $1,500 a chair. I talked to Brett last week just to touch base with him and see how things were coming along. The 4 workstations, brand new workstations that we were able to get from Bear Met are also coming in. They're going to be doing the reorganization, the rewiring, all the new upgraded IT equipment for the handling of possibility of 2, 3 other dispatch cities. And we can start then, and they can help us also in that process of getting those cities to come on board with us. So they'll give us the resources as to who we can go to, instead of outsourcing, we will be sourcing our dispatch to them for a fee.
So this document here includes our current dispatch, correct?
Yes, sir, it does.
So that should be.
All right, but that item's not on the agenda today to discuss,
No,
is
no,
it? No, I'm
but
asking
It's
Mr.
it's in slide number, I already passed it off already. Slide number 13.
Okay,
That's why I brought it up and marked it as such. Again, I mentioned the mall is the bigger part of our deficit. Hillcrest, as far as the streets go, the street funds. I don't support street funds right now just due to the majority of Hillcrest is in San Antonio side. Why are we paying for San Antonio side? Would I like to have it done? Oh, yeah. But there's more than streets there. There's infrastructure involved and property setbacks and all that kind of stuff. So I don't see that. I would like to see Crestview finally finished and gain some money there. Help me remember on this one. Vivian drops off first, then the fire drops off. And
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, that was what I was speaking on, the Hillcrest, yeah. Yeah, I don't think we should be taking on any Hillcrest until we determine what we're gonna do with that mall. That's the biggest part of this whole thing.
And Mayor,
Yes.
that alarm that just went off was marking a 10-minute point from when y'all began your
okay,
Q and A.
so we have to limit the discussion there.
Well,
I'm done.
I was just
But
letting you know
can-
that was.
You can
y'all
go ahead,
can-
Jack.
No,
The city council has the,
Heaven forbid we talk about budget.
I'm sorry.
Y'all can
Mayor.
extend that.
So the city council has the opportunity to extend the time just by majority vote.
That's correct. So
Okay.
yeah, if y'all
So
want to take.
I would make a motion to extend the time for this
Here-
discussion.
We're talking splitting hairs here on budget stuff. And y'all passed the ordinance last week, which we already had it in effect. So what did you do? You spent more money sending an ordinance to have Frank draft it up. And it was useless to do that. We understood what you were saying. We heard we listened and heard. And yet you still want to spend money with an attorney. And he's trying to throw you guys a bone. He's saying, no, you got it in your ordinances already. You wanted to spend the money on updating an ordinance that didn't need to be updated. And with that, I'll yield.
I made a
Councilmember
motion to,
Sands?
I made a motion to
Councilmember
extend
Sands.
the debate
Okay,
or the discussion period.
you still got the floor, Jack. Okay.
You need a second and a.
Second.
Okay, so we have a vote. We called second. Say a second to vote to extend. Do we have other votes that follow?
I think Mr. Burton has requested you do roll call votes for all motions.
Okay. This is where it's just gonna get too complicated and confusing.
I'm
to have
repeating
to do
what
this.
Mr.
I know,
Burton
I'm just
asked for
saying.
last meeting, because
Right.
you've been calling for just general votes,
Right,
and then you were calling for roll call, and
So you
Mr.
want
Burton
roll-
asked for a
yeah.
roll call.
okay, so
So-
we have a roll call vote. Miguel Valverde? Mr. Sines?
Yay.
Mr. Lysia?
Yay.
Mr. Sellers?
I have no idea what we're voting on.
We're voting
You
to
know, I've been
extend the,
listening
the
to y'all
period
about
to
this
discuss the
10-minute
budget.
rule. That's all, that we, did something last, is that what this is all about, really?
Limiting your talk on a
I
certain item.
mean, we already voted on that before. We've done it. We're not gonna redo it, are we?
No, this is just to extend the period of time that we have to discuss the budget.
But we just did that the last meeting.
No, the motion that you're referring to from last meeting was to limit discussion to 10 minutes because there were concerns about people talking too much, right?
Well,
So now we're trying to extend the period that we can discuss the budget, because this obviously requires more than 10 minutes because it's such
I
an
agree.
important
So,
topic.
yes.
Okay, Mr. Burden?
Heaven forbid I throttle anybody, yes.
Okay, we have 5-0 record vote on allowing extended time.
Mr. Burton still had the
He's
floor, so if he has
already
any
yielded.
additional
Yeah,
I
he
questions.
yielded.
So it's a mute point. I guess later we can discuss this in another time about, the First Amendment possibility of freedom of speech. We'll have not an opportunity to address. I think this whole 10-minute thing is really silly and just unnecessary,
let's-
and it prohibits us from getting work done. But nevertheless, I've
Let's move
said my
forward.
piece.
Let's truck forward.
Let's move forward. So anyone else have any more comments for Mr. Messick?
Yes, sir, I do. I forgot one more thing.
Okay. Mr.
Oh,
Valverde?
the deficit spending for EDC shows 473K. And no anticipated partnership distribution of revenue. A couple months ago, maybe 5, 6 months ago, council gave direction to see if the city could find a developer to buy us out of this Wonderland deal. Does anybody know the status on that, where we stand?
I don't think that would be, can we go ahead and discuss that, Counselor, being that it's not an item on the agenda, it's general discussion? Give us some direction on that.
So your budget item, I mean, this is a budget workshop.
Yes,
So
sir.
the whole idea is to eventually end up at a budget that y'all, a majority can agree to
Okay.
adopt. So as long as the discussion is within that context, I mean, that's very broad. It's anything the city's spending money on, but it would be limited to spend more or less in the budget.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure we all stay on the same track. So, Mr. Valverde, continue. You have the floor, sir. Continue.
I'm sorry?
I think your question was to him about, has anything
Yeah,
developed?
I'm just
Mr.
asking, does
Fernandez?
anybody know the status on the direction that the city, the council provided?
Mr. Perales is going to answer that.
Yes, sir. I think that with the EDC, and I know some of the connections that we have, we're still working towards finding somebody that can help us out in that area.
Great, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Perales?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on the dispatch stuff. It was a budget discussion,
Okay,
and it was a direction given during budget. So during this budget discussion, as we move through the process, the decision can be not to pursue, and
Okay.
that's fine.
thank you, sir, for clarifying that. Anyone else?
Just to follow up on that one. So where are we in that? We're in the direction of outsourcing. That's the direction we have right now, right?
That would be your purview, is how, what direction you want to take, if you want to go and discuss that right now. We're still in the budget process discussing these items in the budget.
Right.
If you prefer to go
Right,
into
but
that, you
that's-
can do that as
right.
well.
And so my question is the direction that the council gave to staff to move forward with finding a method of outsourcing?
According to Mr. Perales, he was saying that is still in place. If you want to change that, give him directions now to make that change.
I'd like to keep it the way it is and just keep moving forward.
So you want to continue to outsource the dispatch services?
Continue to study the feasibility and the possibility of outsourcing dispatch.
Okay, is that a motion that you're making, or is that?
No,
just a
it's
comment?
just,
no.
it's just this comment.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the status
okay.
quo.
Yeah, there's
I
no-
just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
that he's not making a motion. All right, and so at one point or another, we'll have to take this subject up as an item on the agenda to discuss for directions as how you want to move forward in what you just vocalized. Okay, that's what we'll do in the next meeting. Right now, just by you saying that will not make that occur Because if there's others on the council that want to go another direction and don't want to outsource the dispatch, they can vote to do so or not do so. You see what I'm saying? And that's the way I understand it. We'll go in another meeting, put it item on the agenda, and then that will be discussed to either vote to keep it as it stands, or we move forward to change direction and not outsource dispatch.
Well, yeah, before, I mean, it's just exploratory right now.
Right
Yeah,
now
so
it's
there's-
exploratory,
Before
right?
anything actually
Yeah,
changes,
so we would have
it'll
to
come
do it in
before.
another meeting.
Yes,
One of our,
definitely.
that's
Yes.
one I want to clarify. Okay. So if no one has anything else,
Well,
I'd like to.
I do,
just-
Mayor.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Sines.
So, the current expenses for the communications department is about 450,000 or so.
Yes, sir. Mhm.
And that's projected to increase every year by
course.
whatever the COLA and steps are.
Mhm.
What, Mr. Prowse, what would the potential savings for outsourcing dispatch be if we removed it all and outsourced it all to like the sheriff's office?
Probably be looking at about half of the expense would go away. You still have to pay for the service. So, you'd probably be saving anywhere between 200 and 250,000 a year. Part of that savings would also include maintaining some presence for non-emergency calls. And some of the other functions that some of these folks have, like helping out with the auction and things like that. But that would be minimal. So we will be looking at about 225,000 savings in total.
Okay.
Anything else, Mr.?
And those are really rough
Science.
estimates, so.
I'm not going to quote you. Yes, Mayor, you were talking about the potential for bringing in revenue and other cities utilizing our dispatch. Do you have any leads on that or any estimates on how much we
Well,
could potentially bring in as revenue?
We don't, because of the fact that the initial step was to get the equipment because it was free. We could get that, so it
Right.
didn't cost us anything. The same thing with the workstations. So the idea was to improve the services in our dispatch services, upgrade the IT services, regardless of whether we take someone in or not. It's free, and so we have the capabilities to do so. So what I was doing is giving the city the option to not outsource our dispatch and instead flip it the other way around where we become the recipient of any allocation of funds for our city instead of it going out. And I know that at least one councilman I've talked to has advocated to me that that would be the death of the city if we were to do that. I firmly believe that myself. When we lose our dispatch services, we're going to cease to exist in a certain aspect for the emergency service and the fire department services, because there's so many different aspects that you have to look at. The personal connection of the dispatchers that know pretty much everyone in the community here for years, and they've changed over from time to time, but mostly everybody knows personally who lives here in this community. So that personal touch is always important. The services in general, having that new upgrade will be a tremendous boost for us, and it will just be a matter of a little time to get those figures that you're asking for. But since the first step of the process was to get the equipment, the second step was to find out exactly what cities, because Bear Met 911 indicated that they would help us get these cities. They would identify cities that need services and would be able to work out a contract with us in some sort, and we determine the language, all that. So we would have to have, another meeting and talk about all these particulars. But for the meantime, with the equipment that we currently have, we're going to have the facilities and the capabilities of doing it. So we have the tools. They're ready, free. It didn't cost us anything.
Well, as Mr. Prowse says, not the equipment, that's the expense, it's the individuals,
Right.
the employees. But you said, just want to reference something you said that it's going to be the death of our city.
I feel it is.
Don't believe that. I mean, there's, Mr. Prowse, 20, 25 cities or municipalities or agencies that use.
Well,
Not just with the sheriff's department, there's other cities that have created partnerships around the region that also use the sheriff's department. And it's not just cities, it's school districts and college districts that also take advantage of that.
Thank you. So my,
Let me rephrase it so I re-clarify. If you don't want to use the word death of our city, let's use the word detrimental. To me, it's detrimental to our city to remove our dispatch. Because I think it's not very, very, very smart to do something like that.
the reason I ask is because we have a $223,000 right now budget deficit, and we're not going to nickel and dime our way to that. You know, we can save 10, 15, 20, 30,000 here. That's not going to get us to the 225 that we need to save. So I think it's something that we as a council need to keep in mind, that we have to save $225,000 or we're going to have to raise our rates significantly.
And this is what I've been pretty much advocating from day one, like in this council meeting. And without having to point fingers anywhere, we all know what caused the problem. And I'll let you finish when you let me know when you're ready to finish up. Then
I don't mind having a dialogue back and forth.
okay, no, I'll let you go ahead. You have the floor.
I think you have the idea to save money for the city, but you also have proposals that you've done that were to spend money without accounting for length of time or the amount. You've also proposed things for the city that we just don't have the money for. You're proposing expenditures out of the hotel motel tax fund that we need to ensure that are eligible expenses. There are regulations that we have to abide by with those funds. So the most important thing we have to do as a council is make sure that our city is on solid financial footing. That way we can provide those essential services of police and fire. Now, I know that when you all met with a bunch of citizens, you all asked about dispatch, and those citizens said, yes, they did want to keep their dispatch. But I guarantee you that to a man, because I've talked to several citizens as well, to a person, they would say they would prefer to have their police and fire here intact, providing emergency services, and outsource that dispatch if necessary. And I'll yield to Mr. Liseo.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, sir, please. Mr. Liseo, go ahead.
I hear what you're saying of talking with the Metro 911 and doing these things. I think it's a good step. I think we're just working a little bit contradicting where we need to be. I think we should get the information as to who's willing to come, who we can take on board before they make an expense or we make an expense, and go that way. Because I'm not in agreement of doing everything, because we're going to incur some kind of expense and then find out that maybe they are or maybe they're not. I think I'd like to know if there is a interest of people coming to us, who are they and how are we going to get compensated for it is one thing. I'm in agreement that it's a nice thing for us to keep. It'd be beneficial for us to keep, but can we justify it? Can we sustain it? And moving forward, how do we do it? It's going to keep that continuous expense is going to continue to grow year after year.
Okay. You yield the floor. Thank you, Mr. Liseo. Mr. Burt, Councilman Burt.
Just let it be known, it wasn't me that said the city's gonna die or whatever. But I will say that if we do lose our dispatch, we will never replace it. It'll never be able to be replaced. It'll be more expensive to replace our dispatch. And I would beg to differ with you that citizens do want to keep their dispatch here. And I wish the same intensity that Mr. Lisea is speaking of, about, not sustainable and this and that. I wish that direction was used more when y'all were discussing the mall than our dispatch. And you can sit there and weigh fingers. I was the one that stood up during all those meetings and said that this is a bad idea. It's not sustainable. And I'll leave it at that, but I think we should keep our dispatch, and I think that the citizens want to keep the dispatch.
Okay.
I yield.
Okay, and
Go ahead. Did you want to? Okay, I thought you were, go ahead. Mr. Lysia, you can.
I know
respond.
we keep going back and forth about the mall, the mall, the mall. The mall is, at the end of the day, like, you quote the words of Mr. Valverde. It's an ugly baby, but it's our baby. So it's ours, it's our baby.
Jack, let me
Okay,
finish.
so we have to find a way to get over the pointing of the fingers and work as a unit to move forward, because that's not gonna get us anywhere. So it's a done deal. We have it. We need to move forward. There's no sense in us going, you did it, it did it, it's a done deal. Let's move forward.
And if I were you, I
Go ahead.
would,
Jack, hold on. Yield?
Not yet.
Okay.
And in respect to the dispatch, we have to weigh it out. We're in the situation we're in and we have to figure it out. At the end of the day, that's what we have to do. And we all agree, we're all up here because we have to make tough decisions, and that's what we're gonna have to do. Thank you.
Yield? Finish. Yeah. Mr. Burton, go
and,
ahead.
and if I were you and the previous mayor and council that made that deal, I'd want it kept quiet too,
Yes, ma'am.
you know? I wouldn't want to admit that I voted on that.
I'm just saying, we need to work as a team. We can point fingers all day long and it's not gonna solve anything. That's the point I want to make. I mean, we can point all day long, but we have to work as a team.
Well,
We need
my,
to
my
move-
point is you're dickering over $250,000 dispatch, and you made a $5.4 million, or actually, what is it now? With interest in services, $6 million, and should have brought it before the citizens of Balcones, who would have
And-
most likely voted it no.
We went through the whole process.
But
The voting process
I'm
was
done
that-
talking about mall right
Yeah.
now, so.
Okay. But, again, we'll go back and forth.
If you want
We're,
to speak again.
yeah,
Okay,
we can
go
go.
ahead.
I mean, like I said, we'll go back and forth. At the end of the day, we've got to work together. Decision was made, good, bad, ugly. It was made. It's our baby. We're going to deal with it and we're going to have to figure it out. At the time the purchase was made, we were in a very good financial situation. Things changed. Things changed. We've lost some
Jack.
things along the way, and that's where we're at today. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sellers, you'd like to say a few words?
I guess I want to make a point of order, and I want to make a motion to approve the proposed tax rate that does not exceed the voter approval tax rate.
Okay. So
Second.
we have a motion on the floor to not
So-
increase the tax rate? Is
So
that
y'all
correct?
are,
Yes, sir.
y'all are, I believe, still on item number 1, your
And
budget
Mark
workshop?
seconded
Yeah,
it.
we're still on item number 1, so.
Well, once you
you
conclude
want to
that-
wait till we get to number 2 and make that motion? Yeah, well, we're on the discussion of the budget. Right. Okay. So Counselor, you want to wait till we get to number 2 and then he holds that motion for that?
Yes, so that if what you're trying to do is end debate or discussion on the budget workshop. Understood.
Okay, and so as our counselor told us that that's part of the process of what we're trying to do. And so going back and forth is kind of like a privilege for them the council to discuss these items. So just kind of clarifying. Mr.
And
Silver.
Mayor, I realize that
Okay.
this is all a discussion here, but when we start bickering,
Well, it
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
I didn't see it as that. I think it was constructive. Everybody was in the confines of respect and talking to each other. There was a little bit of mention about the mall, it's a little touchy and contentious on that, but we got off of that and got back on track. And I think that it's healthy if we just continue moving forward to talk about certain things in the budget of how we can try to resolve this deficit that we have. And so if I may, Mr. Sellers, okay, I just wanted to point out a few things that I observed in the budget. So one of the things, Mr. Messick, that I didn't see, and of course, regardless of what position we're in, I've come to realize that, all of these things or the present state that leads to this deficit. Okay? What I have not heard is any suggestions pertaining to something else that might be able to alleviate that $233,000 budget. And if I may offer some suggestions, there may be some that you can eliminate overtime estimate. See how much that figure, if we were to go and eliminate overtime on departments, wherever they would be relevant to, whatever department it was, an estimated figure of how much that would save us in overtime, just temporarily until we get over this hump and get things straightened out. Maybe look at some small reductions in each department, where we can cut back a little bit. Maybe remove any increases for certification pay, just temporarily, not permanently, but temporarily, to give us a Band-Aid. See how much money that would save us. The last resort that I'm sure nobody wants to do, but it is sometimes necessary, is we delete employees, full and part-time, in certain areas that are not really core delivery services, like police and fire. We wouldn't touch maintenance, public works, things like that. Maybe other areas we can look at that we might be able to look at, might help us a little bit. Insurance costs. Is there any savings more that we can go and get out of that, and to get us still good coverage for the employees, but reduce the insurance cost of where it's escalating more and more, obviously, with our economy? That would be another place. Again, on the outsourcing of the dispatch, I just would not recommend that. These are the hard decisions that have to take place. As mayor, I recommend to the city council to look at these a lot more carefully, because they are core delivery services that people moved into our city for. Our police, our dispatch, our fire department, they're all important core delivery services. And that's what makes our little town such a nice niche. And if you go back, I read again, which I had not done in a while. I went and read the history of Balcones Heights. And it was such an interesting read, because it really invigorated me to understand the process of how we were here. And Deli was part of that, because she was way back, just like I was back in those days. And then when I went back to Clyde Cruz, there was two waves of what we're experiencing right now in the city. Two waves that we went to, actually three that we went to. It was when they first started, they had to fund themselves. They had to get their water services, sewer services, all of that, because San Antonio didn't want to pitch in to help. And so we ended up getting that resolved. People in the community pitched in. They went out and paid for repaving of streets on their own just to get their street paved. This is how involved and how much the community cared for its city. And they went and spent this money. They had a water well where I really wish we wouldn't have sold our old city hall where it's at, because that was where the original water well was at. And people would gather and they would get their water resource, because San Antonio didn't want to give it to us. So to make a long story short, that history taught me a lot to see where we're at right now. And what I want to caution the city about is to be very careful, because there's so many things that are affecting our city right now in terms of the economy. Today, the stock market, did anyone have a chance to look at the stock market? The stock market has really fallen really low. There is a tremendous amount of activity right now in the stock market that is going to have an overall effect on the world in general. Japan just dropped their interest rate to 2.5%, which has had a rippling effect completely everywhere. So what I want to caution the city to do, and I've been saying this over and over and over, is if we get $1 million anticipated revenue coming in, let's not spend the full $1 million. It'd be great to have it, great to have all these other jobs, but we're spending everything out of what we get in on the banking that we're going to get that estimated revenue coming in traditionally, historically. But what if this war takes place in Israel, Hezbollah? You're going to have a ripple effect all over the world, and all economies are going to be affected. You can see the stock market is reacting to it right now. They don't know what's going to happen. So they're pulling money out. They're not investing. And this is having a rippling effect. And it's going to start affecting some of these loans on the housing market. When that happens, and it's already happening because the feds are looking at possibly bringing another interest rate lower, raising it a little bit more. And the reason is because once you got housing stock market going down, then people stop spending money. And guess what? Sales tax revenues. What we traditionally had is going to go down. So we have to anticipate that.
Yeah, and if I might respond.
Yes,
to
sir.
Some of that. If housing market rates go down, actually people will start buying more. That's what they're waiting for, is for the housing rates to go down. As far as the economy going down, that's a valid point. If the economy starts going downhill and we're in a recession, then we're not going to get all this budget revenue. We're not going to get all this sales taxes. So now we have a larger deficit.
Right.
All the more reason now to address it now before it happens. As far as cutting operational costs, that was mentioned. We run a lean budget with operation costs. Mr. Lamar Gillian pounded that into our heads over the decades. We're afraid to buy pencils now because we don't want to increase the budget. Just kidding. But
Those are minimum. Yeah.
and so operational costs are only 20% of your budget. I think Mr. Sines hit it right on the head when he said it earlier. You're not going to nickel and dime yourself out of this. Your biggest cost, 80% of your general fund, is personnel costs.
Yeah.
And that's where you're going to see your biggest savings. As far as the overtime, it's not based on pie in the sky estimates. It's based on what we're actually doing. Now, if you want to take services off the streets and save overtime, we could explore that. But again, you're talking saving 10,000 here, 10,000 there, 10,000 there. And look, it's your budget, it's your services, I understand, but I'm just saying, in the long term of things, you're still living in the glory days when the mall was bringing in great revenue and you had red light cameras and your revenue pie was real big, but it's not the case anymore.
That's my whole point.
Red light cameras are gone. The mall is shrinking, all of our revenue sources, but you still want to hold on to all these services that you provide. And that pie is getting bigger. It's lopsided now. You don't have enough revenues to pay for everything you want. Okay, and that's the point. And so what I'm trying to get moving forward is some kind of consensus. And I know we can word the tax thing to say we're not going to go over the voter approval rate. That's fine. But what are you going to tell me to do to get rid of this deficit? Because it's coming down to outsourcing, or it's coming down to making other cuts
And then
somewhere.
we're going to get there. That's
Okay, and so do you want to outsource dispatch? Basically, as I see it as a finance person with no interest in what you do, it's your city. Okay, do you want to outsource dispatch? Do you want to cut cops, fire department? What do you want to cut? Please give me some direction so I can have a balanced budget to you in September.
And so, in closing, this is what you just said right now and what other council members have said to us tonight magnifies the problem. And that is that we are in a deficit. We need to make it up. And this is where I was talking about the hard decisions that we're going to have to make. This council is going to have to make a decision. Are you going to cut employees? And you're doing it by cutting away the dispatch. You're cutting employees there. And you're going to save 250,000 estimated is basically what it is there. But you're still going to have a cost that's going to be affiliated with maintaining a staff here of some sort to be able to field these calls or whatever else is going to be needed to in the interim or during the time that we switch over to another contractor we contract with. So ask yourself this, is $250,000 really enough money for you to do away with our dispatch? Because I'm vehemently against it. I'm going to fight as hard as I can to not let that occur in our city. And I believe that it's an important integral component. And I think that we need to look at that now with what you just said. All these suggestions that I made, these possible proponents that I'm offering that maybe would help. Then you're just going to have to look at strong decisions on cutting back your staff. And you're going to have to start cutting back on salaries. You know, the top tier salaries are going to need to be dropped. And we cannot afford those salaries anymore. Because if you want to drop and get rid of the dispatch to make up for these problems that have been created right now, then you better start really looking at the real serious decisions that you need to make. Now, we're not the only ones, just so you know. I did some research. Houston, Dallas, Even some of the smaller cities, they're having problems. Everyone is having problems with money, and it's gonna get worse. So we either do it now and decide what positions we can either, and that's why I had put it in that last agenda. So we're reclassifying positions. So we can maybe save them, but still save some money somewhere. And so I would suggest, if it's okay with the council, and in Mark's suggestion in the past, is there a way we can do a quick little study to determine how much money we would save if we were to take the path of, let's eliminate job A, let's eliminate job B? How much would that get us to?
Mayor, if I may, I've
Mhm.
never suggested cutting job A. or
I
job
didn't
B.
say so, Mark. I just said, you always are suggesting that we do a study or that we research more. So to clarify, that's what I mean. Okay, not that you're suggesting to cut anything back. I'm suggesting your idea always to say, let's research it. Let's look into it some more before we make that decision. And that's what I'm saying.
Mayor?
Clarify.
If I may,
Yes,
that's real easy. You just tell me what positions you want gone and I can give you that answer real fast.
that's what we need to.
But I
consider.
would like to throw this out there, okay? The city has a payroll problem. We have a payroll problem because we have too many people on the payroll. It's not that we're overpaying anybody in this city. I don't know, market surveys point to that. Here's the market, we're here, we're always here. Market's always gone up and we're never over the market. And so if that's the case, then the logical conclusion to come to then, in my mind, as a numbers guy, is we got to get people off the payroll.
Yeah, that's it.
Because
Well,
nickeling and diming people's salaries is not going to fix it.
It was the toughest thing to say, but you have to have the courage to say things that are not popular.
Mayor-
And, I'm not here as a popularity contest. I'm trying to help our city get balanced. And if it means that temporarily we have to eliminate these jobs, then we have to do it. We have to do it to get balanced out. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to penalize us, the taxpayer. We should not have to be bailing you out. And that was my next question. I'll get to you in just a minute. But we should not have to be bailing you out. My next question was, how many times have we had to bail the budget out because of budget shortfalls in the past? How many times like?
I would say every year is a challenge
Every year.
in that
So there is a-
respects, but
There's a historical.
but it's always
pattern.
fixable. And then
Right.
last year we had a problem where, of course, we had to
Right.
take more extreme measures.
But that
and
on
then this
top
year-
of the underlying problems that we may face in the future is what we really got to consider. Because the future is where the answer is going to be. We can't predict it. If anybody knew that, they'd be the trillionaires. We just don't know how it's going to go up and down, but we can see the pattern. We can see the pattern developing worldwide. And then we can also see it statewide as well. And I beg to differ on your assumption on the other assumption that, housing prices will be bought. No, they're not going to be buying because the interest rates are too high. So anyway.
If they come down.
Sure. Fine, go
Yeah,
right ahead.
just point of order to what Mr. Messick was saying. He was suggesting if interest rates go down, which is what the Fed is proposing to do possibly in September, then that would spur economic or people to buy more houses. So that's what Mr.
Yeah,
Messick was
okay.
referring to.
All
So,
right,
but
so-
my question to you, Mr.
Mayor.
Rodriguez, is
Mayor, Mr. Rodriguez is fine.
is you're willing to cut city staff.
Yes.
But
I
you're
mean,
not
I'm
willing to
I'm
cut
not- excuse me,
dispatch.
Let me make sure.
So my question to
Let me
you
make
is
sure. You're trying to
which
put me on the
position,
spot.
well,
I made
which
a
positions,
suggestion.
which positions would you suggest we cut?
Well, this is your prerogative. This is on your plate, not me. I'm just making some suggestions.
Well,
So
you're
this is
suggesting
your
we,
job. Uh-uh.
you're
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
This
I'm-
is
I'm-
your
I'm-
job.
I'm using some of the suggestions you made.
Okay.
You suggested cutting overtime. Okay. Our total overtime is about $117,000
Okay.
proposed for next year.
Okay.
114 of that is police, fire, and dispatch. $3,000 of that is for the general city staff. That is public works, et cetera. So I don't think we can cut police overtime. I don't think we can cut fire overtime. That is $104,000.
Okay.
Okay, so we can't cut that. That's not an option. We need our police, we need our fires available.
I didn't suggest cutting police and fire.
Well, you suggested cutting overtime. So,
No, that's true. But
so
again,
again,
you're the ones that make the decision. You are the council.
my
You
point,
decide. I've just suggested.
my point though is the only available overtime that could be cut is $3,000. And my point earlier is we're not going to nickel and dime our way to $225,000. We're not going to cut overtime and say, yay, we made our budget.
So what do you
Okay,
have to do?
we're not,
You gotta cut employees.
yes. So,
That's right.
but my question to you is which employees, if we're not going to cut dispatch, if you're not willing to cut dispatch, you're not even willing to entertain that, which employees do we cut? Do
I
we
don't
cut our
know.
finance director? I think that's a
I don't
necessary
have the
position.
power to do that. You do.
I
So
get
you
that,
have to
but
make the suggestion.
I
You
get
have to
that.
take the blunt on that.
I get that, but
And
that's,
then
If
Mr.
I may.
Hmm?
I think the mayor is in a position to where he's not willing to go either way, and it is the decision of the council.
It
So I
is.
think that's the way we're gonna go.
Yeah, it
So
is.
I think we're fighting
It's
a
nothing-
mute,
yeah.
a mute, trying to get the opinion of the mayor. It's not gonna benefit us
because you'll
because.
hold me
well,
to it.
he's giving suggestions already, so I'm asking for
Try-
his
trying to help
opinion.
him.
That's all I can
What
do is
other
give you
suggestions do you
suggestions.
have?
So
All I can do is give you food for thought, give you suggestions, as I've told you over and over again. I've told you many times, and don't forget now, you guys are the ones that make the decision, not me. I make suggestions to you. That's it. And I'm doing my job by doing
And
it.
I'm asking for suggestions.
I don't have any for you, to be honest
Okay,
with you.
so you don't have
You're-
any suggestions
No,
other than
I don't, because
either,
I don't have the power, because even if I did have them, you wouldn't do them. You wouldn't do them.
actually not, I'm actually looking ahead on
So,
this agenda, and I actually agree with one of your proposals.
okay, then
So I
please
don't,
make a
I don't
suggestion to
oppose
your
you.
colleagues.
I
Make a
ha-
suggestion based off
I
of that.
have.
That'd be great.
I have.
Okay. So your dispatch is the only thing you're making a suggestion.
That's the one that gets us across the goal line
Okay, great. That's great. And if that's what your colleagues
without
wanna
raising our
do,
tax rate.
that's what your colleagues want to do, then you make your motion and the council will vote and you.
No, we don't
make it
have-
for- We move forward.
That's not on the agenda
So-
for this.
Oh, yeah, okay, but I'm referring to the future.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may,
Yeah.
so yeah, tonight, the item one that y'all are on is just discussion only. You're gonna have another budget workshop and probably another one after that until you get
Right.
to a point where you're actually adopting the budget.
Mhm.
So what I think staff's looking for now is any kind of direction to bring back a budget that the majority of y'all can agree on.
Right.
So,
Point of
and if
order.
that can be exploratory.
Go ahead, Mr. Burton.
Haven't we
Hold
haven't we
on,
surpassed the
let him
10?
speak. Yes, sir. Okay, but we're in discussion. We're going to let you speak, Mr. Gillian.
Haven't we passed the 10-minute?
Yes,
Yeah.
the
20,
horse?
about 20 minutes ago.
Well,
Yes,
we
and-
voted to extend it, and we
the
didn't put a
extension,
timeline on that extension.
Yeah. So,
yeah, the
So,
extension of the
I
budget
mean-
conversation, y'all are gonna need to decide in that ordinance whether an extension needs to have a time extend for 10 more minutes or 15 more minutes. Extending it indefinitely kind of defeats the purpose of it, but yeah, we are, it's up to the mayor to enforce that, so, or up to council to vote to enforce that. But,
Thank you.
um,
Is
yeah,
it possible for us to call a question to end the discussion on number one?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to call that
There's
question.
okay, but you still have Mr. Gillian that
Oh,
wants to speak. so
Sorry,
you're gonna-
after
you
Mr.
gotta let him
Milligan,
speak.
Mr. Gillian speaks. I don't want to cut you off again. Apologize for last time.
The first question I would like to ask is the COLA in the current budget that we're looking at tonight, does it include PD only?
Mr. Messick, where's Mr. Messick? There.
It is 2.7 for all employees.
Okay, 2.7 for all employees. I just want to make a point out of that. I'm not going to make any suggestions. I'm just saying, know what's in your budget. Previously, we had quite a healthy discussion about PD being required and the others are optional, but that's for you guys to decide. How much did the city sweep in this year's budget from the general fund, out of the general fund? How many months did we sweep? Oh, yeah, we'll play tag team.
That was $544,000.
So we swept 541,000 back into general fund capital. Okay, just want to clarify that. So it wasn't as bad a year as we thought, I guess, huh? Just sweep money back, right? Okay, just checking. So when we swept back to 3 months in reserve, is that correct? Okay, I just want to clarify that one. I think one of the things that the council needs to be brought up to date on is the Hillcrest project and what the impact is of that. One of the council members tonight said, we shouldn't be responsible for the other side. But we had this discussion in deep detail, I think 3 years ago, and we are responsible for the other side because it's our border street. That's what we were told then. It might not be true. I don't know, but that's what we were told. Do we expect any cash flow from Wonderland of the Americas in the next 2 years? That's something I would like to know later on. Do we have any kind of revised pro forma from the one that showed that we're going to get over $3 million over 10 years? If not, I'd like to see it. What action should be considered to balance the general fund budget? You've had a healthy discussion about it. There are some other options. They're not very comfortable to deal with, but there are other options. We are, for council to know, we are committed to the Hillcrest project, period. We got, how much did we get, Mr. Messick? $6 million from county, 5 million. So we've already got a check from county for 5 million. We can't belly up on the Hillcrest project. It's a done deal. You're going to have to find out how you're going to pay for it. And that's going to be hard. I was in the previous council that went into the Wonderland of the Americas deal. In hindsight, which we did not have, it was not such a good deal after all. But we went by numbers that were produced by a firm that the mall manager hired. Now he can say, well, I'm not responsible for those. If he did say that, he can say that. But when you go out and hire somebody and put your trust in that firm to give you accurate numbers, it's like going out and hiring a CPA. CPAs get in trouble all the time by doing pro formas that are way, way out. If that's the case, that if that's what had happened, I'm not absolving my action. I'm just saying we went with the best numbers we had and we trusted the firm that did it. Should we done more detail? Maybe so, but you can't go back. Thank you, Mr. Councilman. My other question is, and I'm going to go back to what Councilman Sines said. How much detail have you gone into this budget? Have you gone down line item detail like we used to do, Councilman Burton? You remember those days, right? I mean, we went down line item detail. But back to what Councilman Sines said, every time we went down line item detail, the most we can muster usually was about $50,000. So you don't get that much out of it, but we did go into that detail. We knew what that budget had in it. The next thing I think we need to know is how much unfunded requirement is there going to be in that Hillcrest project so we can start projecting future payments on future notes. I don't know if we even know
Real
that.
quick, could I get a motion to allow him to speak more from the council, please? We're at the 3 minutes.
A
Let's give us
motion
some more
to
time,
approve.
please.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll call the vote. Mr. Valverde,
Aye.
Mr. Sines,
Aye.
Mr. Alessia,
Aye.
Mr. Sellers, Mr. Burton. Okay, you have more
Okay.
time. Mr. Gillian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I know this is hard. Mayor Craven had some hard battles to fight to get the budget balanced. And he finally did after 3 or 4 years. It's just going to take a lot of dedication. Plus, it's going to take a lot of the fruits of the spirit, you guys working together to get this thing solved. Pointing fingers at each other, making comments like that, not going to change a darn thing. What's done is done. Water under the bridge. You ain't going to go back there and fetch that water back. Thank you very much.
For your comments, Mr. Burton.
I was going to say to Mr. Gillian that in discussions with Mr. Weiss, he said if we were receiving that what do you think, 4 million
3.5,
3.5
3.5,
million?
3.4 million.
a year?
No, no, no,
I mean-
no, that was a 10-year plan.
We wouldn't see a penny of it as of as of the day of that meeting. He said, we wouldn't be paying you anyway. And he said also something to the effect, and I'm not quoting him, but I'm, how do you say it?
Paraphrase.
Paraphrase. Thank you very much. I'm paraphrasing here. He was, you know, he was of the opinion that, hey, I did my due diligence here. I got my $5.4 million. It's up to the city to do their due diligence and to make sure that those numbers were
Well,
correct.
well, since you opened this door, I want to make a point of clarification for you. If you go back and look at the sheet that I gave you, we had a $1 million payment coming back to the partnership in year 2.
We never seen it.
Well, I know we didn't see it. That's the whole point. And he said, the manager said that I did not ask questions. I specifically asked, because I saw that number, I specifically asked, is there $1 million coming back to the partnership, and are we going to get our 470,000 out of it? And he told me and the rest of the council that was on council at that time, yes, we've got goose egg since then. So,
And
you know,
Mayor,
he can say what he wants to say.
if I can, just,
Thank you.
just so I can follow.
Thank you,
along.
Mr. Gillian.
This is in the budget, correct?
What's that?
What's under
Yes,
discussion?
the WOTA is? Yes, it is.
Okay, I just
Yeah,
wanted to,
it
I was
is.
trying to find the line item.
Yeah, we
May I
kinda
clarify?
clarified that earlier.
May I clarify
Mr. Messick,
there
yes,
for
sir.
Mr. Gillian? The MPO has pledged, I believe it's what, 5 million now, or possibly 6? Yeah, with the potential to go up with 6 with inflation, but we haven't received any of the money for that yet. That's based on whether we go forward with the project or not.
Mr. Messick, can I
Mayor.
ask you a question? Why is it that we can't take the 223, you said? Budget shortfall to what,
223,000.
223,000 and change. Why don't we take that out of reserve fund, use it, pay it down, hit us evened out, and then down the line, find a way if that's feasible.
Could that be
Try that
done?
way.
Could that be done? Yes, but what you're doing then is you're cutting into your general fund balance, and your ordinances say that you need to keep 3 months of it there.
And it's already.
And so, and by doing that, what have you really done? You've kicked the can down the road for
Right.
one more year. And that's why we were saying, you can nickel and dime this to death, but the problem is it's back next year by doing that. And so that's why we're advocating, or that I would advocate for a reduction in salary.
Yes, I think you made that point very clear, and I concur that our problem is in the payroll. Yes, Mr. Sellers?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind the council what's right in front of you, page 5. Once we pay off Vivian and the fire truck, which is going to be by the fiscal year of 26, we're going to be saving $190,000. Okay, that's what it adds up to be.
It does, Mr. Sellers, but it's projected to go right back to Hillcrest and actually more.
And then some, yes, sir.
Well,
So
that's.
It's 190,000 we'll save, but then
Getting
we're
out
gonna
of
turn around
that
the next year and
bill, though.
spend
Of course, it's
240.
got to go in something else,
Okay,
but.
So, but I
Also,
did,
throughout here, you've got pluses like you said, we've got on the plus side, $37,500 that may or may not be spent, but it's there to spend. So, and there's several areas in this pamphlet y'all have that we're on the plus side, that we have the money to spend, but we don't have, we may not have to spend it. So I'm just pointing it out, what's, right here. That's all.
okay. Any other discussion? And do you want to give Mr. Messick any, Councilman, do you want to get Mr. Messick any direction as to what you want to instruct him to do at this point? Or to consider doing, to prepare for our next budget hearing?
yeah. So, Mr. Messer, could you provide 2 budgets? Is that a possibility? Show us with cutting dispatch and without cutting dispatch in the next?
That's
the
just,
next
that's the
budget.
change of one item, really. I mean, it's, you'd save 450,000 out of the budget, but then I would turn around and reallocate 225,000 of it elsewhere, like Mr. Perales was saying, so for the cost of the dispatch and
What
whatever.
impact would
So-
that have on our proposed tax rates and all that?
Yeah, and so obviously, based on outsourcing, not getting rid of dispatch, but outsourcing, it would save the city roughly $225,000, and it would eliminate the deficit that we have.
Sellers?
I'm gonna make a motion to close the debate.
Okay, motion's on the floor to close the debate. We have a second to the motion. Mr. Burton has second. Let's call roll call. Mr. Valverde, you want to vote?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Sines.
Aye.
Mr. Lucia.
Aye.
And we have
Aye.
Mr. Sellers is aye, Mr. Burton is aye. Okay, debate has been closed on this particular subject, and we will now move on to item number 2. So I think we already had a motion made on item number 2. The city council will take record vote on the tax
Would you need
rate.
to
So it was-
redo the motion?
Yeah,
I-
I would go ahead and make it fresh because it was out of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so what I'm saying is that go ahead and gonna tell him after that, just go ahead and restate your motions. for item number
I was
2.
corrected on my motion, so
Okay,
I
sir.
removed that.
All right, go ahead and you have the floor. So the language, he gave it to you right here at this. It's right
making
here.
a
And those are just choices. You can put any number that you want in there, and it's not binding, again.
Make a motion to approve number 1.
Is that sufficient?
Yeah, if you can go ahead and read it into the record. if you
All
don't
right,
mind.
that's, I make a motion to approve the proposed tax rate that does not exceed the voter approval tax rate of 0.612376 per 100 property valuation.
Let me make sure you're correct. You were not wanting to increase the tax. Is that
I
correct?
make a motion to approve that.
To not approve, to not increase. So you're reading the wrong motion.
So no,
It's-
Mayor, what this says is that he's making a motion that whatever our tax rate is will not exceed the voter tax rate.
Okay. I
So it's
just
not
wanna
saying-
It
clarify.
can be lower, but it can't
Is
be
that correct,
higher.
Counselor?
Right, that's what I read, yeah.
It's,
He
it's,
doesn't want to increase the
what
tax
it
rate.
provides is a city flexibility, so it could be anywhere from 0 all the way up to 0.612.
It does not exceed the voter.
Right.
the-
So it, like Mr.
Tax
Messick
rate.
said, it doesn't lock us in. We're not setting the tax rate.
So
We're just
then he-
saying,
That's why I'm clarifying. I think what he wants to say is he wants to make a motion to approve a proposed tax rate of 60.4 or 64 point per 100 of property valuation. That's what he's saying, correct,
no,
Mr.
that's not
Sellers?
what he's
No,
You
saying.
don't
sir,
want the
no.
tax to go up, correct?
This won't make the tax
rate.
go up.
Hold on,
It's-
excuse me. Let me make sure I clarify.
No, I don't, yeah,
You don't want the tax to go up,
I don't
correct?
want the tax to go up.
Okay, so he wants item number 2, not number 1.
That's not,
He just told me.
I may have
you
misread.
I don't think you understand what the motion says, Mayor. So it's
Okay,
not
excuse me,
saying,
let me get clarification from our counselor. I prefer to have him tell us and explain. So
Okay.
please. Counselor, go ahead. What he's trying to make, let's see if you can talk, Mr. Sellers, and ask him to clarify for you so that. we
it
can
also
be
sounds
clear.
like you're
Can you-
coaching him into what to say.
Sir, would you please just allow the counselor to give us direction? Thank you.
So this is what y'all are voting on right now is the proposed tax rate. So this is going to get publicized.
So it's not that our proposed, it's our intention.
Yes, this is just what gets published and this is what the public, when they show up to your budget hearing, is going to be operating under with that information. It's not, y'all can do something different later, but this is for purposes of what's about to be published and noticed to the public. And so those are your options for it can be anywhere between the no new revenue rate or the voter approval tax rate or something higher. It can be whatever number you want at this point.
41.
So I guess what
Yeah,
he was trying to clarify is he does not want to raise the tax. He wants to keep it where it's at.
I think it'll be easiest if y'all can see, the slides did a great job of explaining
Okay.
what you're doing. The no new revenue tax rate is not.
Tell you what, I'm gonna revoke my motion.
The no new revenue tax rate doesn't say anything about whether you're raising or lowering the tax rate. It's about the revenue that you get from it. So if you like.
So Well, I will make a motion to approve a proposed tax rate that does not exceed the voter approval tax rate of 0.612376
Okay.
per $100 of
We're
property.
getting ahead of
You've-
ourselves.
So
First,
now
we
you've
have-
got a motion.
Hold on, wait, he has to ask the chair to recognize him before he makes the
Okay.
motion, okay? So he hasn't asked me to recognize him, so
Can I
hold
be
on,
recognized?
hold off. We have the reason I'm doing, I have a reason, Mr. Sines. I'm not trying to be mean to you. We have a motion already on the floor. We got to get that
He
clarified.
revoked
It
it.
was withdrawn, I
Okay,
believe.
so let's clarify. All I want to do is make sure it's clarified before we get too far ahead. So we've accepted that he has revoked his motion, okay? So now there's no longer a motion on the floor. Now, there is a councilman that wants to make a motion. So now Mr. Sines has to be recognized.
May I be recognized?
Yes, you may, Mr. Sines. Now you can make your motion or whatever you want to say.
I make a motion to approve a proposed tax rate that does not exceed the voter approval tax rate of 0.612376 per $100 of property valuation.
Okay. It's just a matter of decorum. We want to make sure we keep everything, doesn't get crazy.
I'll second.
Okay, Councilman Burton is second. Let's have a roll call. Councilman Valverde,
Yay.
Councilman Sines,
Yay.
Councilman Lysia,
Yay.
Councilman Sellers,
Yay.
Councilman Burton.
Yay.
Okay, motion carries 5-0, unanimous decision. Okay, Mr. Messick?
Yeah, and so the next thing that we need to vote on is scheduling the public hearing. This one's pretty straightforward. It's already on the budget calendar. We're just asking you that you approve what's on the budget calendar, that we set the public hearing for September 23rd during regular city council meeting, which afterwards we will approve the tax rate and the budget.
Okay, do we have a motion on the floor? From any council member?
Motion to approve.
Okay, Councilman Burton, motion to approve. Second,
Second.
okay? The motion has been second. Do we have a roll call? Mr. Valverde,
Yay.
Mr. Sines,
Yay.
Mr. Lysia,
Yay.
Mr. Sellers. Okay, one nay, and Mr. Burton.
Yay.
Yay, okay, so we have 4-1. Okay. All right, so we now move on to item number 3. Is that correct? Is that correct? Okay. Discussion and possible action to address the current challenges attracting qualified candidates for BOA board membership and recommending that all city council members be appointed to the BOA board. So what this transpired from, it's very simple. We don't have a BOA board. We may have soon, as we're trying to find individuals, but to not have this problem to continue where we can't take action on a pending appeal or any pending matter before the BOA, I sought counsel from our attorney, and he gave me instructions that it is possible that the city council and the city council in the past has acted on this capacity before when this has occurred, and we can continue to do so. And all we need to do is just adopt an ordinance. Tonight, we just need to adopt your wishes that we can move forward to do something like that so that a pending application can be, addressed, it can be resolved, and by having a hearing again, and we can move forward. And then once the BOA, I'm sure, gets organized and we have members, then they can continue to move forward in their capacity till it happens again and we're in place to do it.
May
Yes,
I
go ahead, Mr.
suggest,
Perales.
since you already have 2
Yes, sir.
members and 2 council members, that the rest of the council just become
Alternates.
alternates.
Yeah.
That way we can pick and always have the required 4. that,
Perfect.
for each one
Whatever
of
the-
games. So
the-
that
our-
would be my suggestion.
Okay,
that you move
whatever our
forward.
legal department gave us direction to do, we'll follow. So do we have a motion on the floor to adopt that particular policy?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to add city council members as alternate board members to the BOA.
Okay.
So it's going to be,
Councilman Sines, do we have a second?
A second.
Councilman
Just-
Valverde.
Just to clarify, y'all are actually adopting, the motion would be to adopt an ordinance first that actually changes the existing ordinance
Okay.
to allow council to serve like that?
So I'll make the motion to adopt or to amend the ordinance to allow city council members to serve as alternate board members. Is
Yes,
that-
sir. Thank you.
Perfect. Do we have a second again to his motion? Same-
I
same
did second.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then so let's take a roll call. We know that Mr. Valverde is yay,
Yay.
Mr. Science.
Yeah.
Mr. Lisea,
Yay.
Mr. Sellers,
Okay,
Mr. Burton.
Yay.
Okay, we have 5-0. Motion passes.
And now with that ordinance in place, if you want to make a motion to actually appoint any council members not currently on the board
Right.
to serve as alternates, that will then allow staff to get if the two citizens don't show up, we can at least get 5 of you
Right.
and
Mr.
hold a
Perales?
BOA beforehand.
So that would be Mr. Valverde, Mr. Sines, and Mr. Burton, because the other two are already members.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll make
That
that
mis-
motion to appoint Mr. Valverde, Mr. Burton, and myself as alternate members to the Board of Adjustments.
So it'd be Mr. Valverde, Mr. Burton, and
Myself, Mr.
yourself.
Science. Yeah.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Burton.
Yeah.
All right. We have a second by Mr. Burton. Let's do a roll call. Mr. Valverde,
Aye.
Mr. Science,
Aye.
Mr. Lisea. Aye. Mr. Sellers,
aye.
Mr. Burton.
Aye.
Okay, 5-0, motion carries. We now have a BOA. Got to call a meeting real quick, set it up, Delia, whenever the board, how does that going to work now? Does he have a pending
So
appeal?
it's already been scheduled,
Perfect.
and
Good job.
and the thing is that this will go into effect then, so we'll be able to call on you, so don't hide.
And just get me the ordinance. and
I'm really busy that night.
When it's ready, I'll sign the ordinance as soon as you get it ready for me. Okay, great. So now we have the discussion and possible action to select an executive search firm from the list of RFP submittals to assist the city in searching for their new city administrator. Mr. Perales, you have the floor.
I don't have much to say. I sent out all the packets to all of you to review, and it's really your choice as to which direction you want to go. I mean, it goes from one firm at 18,000 to the highest firm at 55,000. So, it's really a decision that you have to make.
So respectively, this one's 18. And this one's. And then. I was just asking for clarification purposes.
And they all have experience. If you've seen the documents, they all have experience in executive searches. The most expensive one is out of California. And if I'm not mistaken, it does not include expenses. So if you determine that you want the firm to be here present, it will have to add expenses to that. The only fixed cost you have is the first one, which is Clear
Career.
Career. Theirs is a fixed expense. They are local. They're many of their consultants live here and have been city managers in the area, Fredericksburg, Leon Valley. So they are very local and they're familiar with the area. So it's really, and they have a good list of contracts listed there for you to see.
My only sorry. My one concern, and it's a big one, and I don't want to get chastised for saying this, but is on the compensation side, on the salary side.
That's your choice to make. I mean, compensation is not said, you said it. So,
Okay.
that's the one thing about a contracted employee. You set the compensation. Yeah. I mean, there's a range that you can work with, and that's entirely up to council to decide. Remember that one of the things that we've discussed is that position will now have a dual responsibility, which will include a little bit of EDC experience so that you don't need, that's why we move forward with freezing the position of Economic Development Director, so that you could get one person to be able to do both. And that's where the salary is, you can adjust using both salaries to determine where you want to be.
So are these agencies the only option we have? I remember last,
I actually contacted 20. They give us a list of all the executive search firms. I sent invitations to all of them. 4 responded. There's other options. I mean, the last time you used Frank's firm. So it's really up to you on what direction you want to go. This is simply an example of what's available and who's willing to do the work based on the information that I provided, which was guidance from the council. And basically what you do from here is decide who you want, bring them in, and then you start a candidate profile and all that. And that's entirely up to you. What is it that you expect? How much are you going to pay? Things of that nature. You're going to pay for relocation expenses. You know, all those things that come into play, it will be part of the contract with them. They then take that information, go out into the field and find, you know, candidates that are, that meet the eligibilities that you're looking. And then from there, you pick and choose.
Counselor, can you tell us, do you have the information? How much did your law firm charge us last?
I don't have that in front of me. Was that included by
It was-
chance in there?
It was $4,500.
$4,500. Okay. And the services that your law firm provide, would they mirror these executive search firms?
I'll tackle that one.
Yeah, I was gonna
It-
say,
it-
we're not an
it-
executive search firm, so.
It really depends on what you want. So the last time is the firm looked for candidates, qualified candidates, eligible candidates, submitted them to council. If you choose, and they were all the majority were qualified. And that's what you get, that's what everybody's gonna get. Then you call that and you determine who it is that you want to interview. The other thing is that you can also ask that they add the component of criminal background checks and all that. That wasn't done because that wasn't requested back then. And so, you know, it's all a menu of things that you can ask for. And typically, the criminal background checks come when you call the number down to a manageable amount, and then that's when you do the criminal background checks, and then the checks on all social media and things of that nature.
Firm is not, we didn't respond to the RFP, correct? That I'm aware of. So, and y'all are not required to choose, anytime you do an RFP like this, you're not required to pick from the people that responded. You can go back out, choose other options. So if you did want to pick somebody not on the list before you today, that's an option.
Thank you.
Has anyone communicate? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Evaluator.
Yes, I was gonna say, the last time, that we got this, I believe the city paid 5,000 at the time. But anyway, we got approximately 25 applicants. And they were real good applicants. It's a shame that we didn't follow up. Well, we didn't follow up. There were several reasons we didn't. But these other agencies here, they're ridiculous. 18,000, from 18 to 55, 57,000. I think we should go with something cheaper because right now we're not in a position to be spending money like that. And I'm just hoping that we don't throw another $5,000 away.
Well, I provided you guys, Mr. Sellers, go ahead.
Y'all all got these, okay? I don't know if you've read them or not. Looking at the MGT, okay? Looks like they're advertising recruitment somewhere around $25,000. If you look at the, right there in the middle, okay? It says to attract highly talented, accomplished candidates to this position, Village of Kenworth to set a starting annual salary of $180,000. Okay. Well, we all know that this one, trash. So we're going to move to this one, Pearson Partners. All right, they want $57,000 to recruit somebody to bring in candidates. This one is trash. Okay? We're gonna move to this one here. This one is not as residential as the area as Clear Career Professionals. Clear Career Professionals. They advertise Kirby, Selma, Bandera, and this is more to our salary. So I want y'all to just take a look at it and focus on this one. Make a decision, that's all.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir. Sam, go ahead.
if, I think you said, Attorney, that we do have the option to visit back with the firm, your firm?
The agenda tonight is to select from those that responded to this particular RFP.
Mhm.
If y'all don't like any of the options presented to you tonight, then that would be the next step would be to, and I don't want to speak for Frank, that would be something to take up with him. But you could put out another RFP or go find other firms, you know, and whether or not our firm was one of those, that would be something to ask Frank. It wouldn't be at tonight's meeting.
Okay. Then if that's the case, then I would like to make the motion that we table the respondents that we have now and go back and look for a organization that fits within our budget to give us what we need. And then we can take some of the information from these packages and get sure that we get similar services. But to spend this money at this time, I don't think we're ready to do that. So I'd like, my motion is to table this and then move forward to looking for another organization.
I'll second.
We have a motion on the table from Mr. Lisea. Mr. Burton has second. Then we'll call the vote. Mr. Valverde,
Aye.
Mr. Sines,
Aye.
Mr. Lisea,
Aye.
Mr. Sellers,
No.
Mr. Burton.
Aye.
Okay, we have 4-1. Mr. Sellers, nay. And so the motion carries. Table.
I know we already voted, but you didn't call for any discussion on it either. But we've already voted, so that's water under the bridge.
Okay. Does anybody want to discuss anything on it? I think. Mr.
I'd like
Burton,
you to repeat why you wanted to table it.
Just because of the expense, if we can get the similar service for half the price, we go. I don't think so. We had the similar service the last go around, and I think we had very good information. It was broken down in different categories by city experience, leadership experience, no experience, and it was all broken down.
Are you gonna initiate that research?
No, we just, I'm not sure who takes care of that, but we can, I guess,
Frank's firm provided that,
right.
that breakdown,
Do you-
years of experience and all that. The only things that were missing were, the criminal background checks and social media background checks.
Okay. That's fine.
The only problem I have with it is this, is there's a conflict of interest here. Because the council pays the firm's
So y'all,
salary.
just to clarify, y'all have tabled this, so it's.
Well,
it's-
yeah,
The
they
meeting
tabled
can
it.
be adjourned at this point for no further business, but when it does come back up, y'all can definitely look.
Well, there
into
was a
what-
little discussion about it, so I allowed it to occur. And the only thing I want to point out is think about this. This is a conflict of interest because the attorney is paid by and overseen by the city council.
So I
and
think it may be premature. I don't even know if our firm wants to be.
Yeah, I know,
in
but
on
I'm just
this.
telling you
Okay.
that it's conflict of interest, direct conflict of interest, because they have monetary interest in the outcome. Because that individual is going to be having to select the city administrator to be overseeing his duties. So it's a direct conflict of
Okay,
interest.
and we'll adjourn the way you
Okay,
said,
just-
but
just
it
food for-
is,
food for
but
thought.
it is already, and it's not the firm that's selecting it, it's us as a council that's giving the direction,
Right,
not
but
the
you're
company.
hiring a firm and that's.
regardless of who we
Food for thought.
hire. Regardless, thank you.
Food for thought. Okay,
Make the motion that we adjourn.
okay, motion on the floor to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Councilman Valverde, call the vote.
Aye.
Okay, signs.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, Mr. Lysia,
Aye.
Mr. Sellers,
Aye.
Mr. Burden.
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen, all very much.